Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to determine the title. And so the way you determine the title is it comes back down to what your variables were. So there are, different ways that you can come up with titles, right? But for now, I'm going to lay it out as something that's really simple. I'm just going to say that your dependent variable versus your independent variable is your title. So here, I would probably write something like bacteria B grown. Yeah, it's a little late for me right now, so I know you can't tell at my house like what time it is, but I'm tired. So bacteria B, right? This is the dependent variable grown over days. Okay, so this is our y axis. This is our x-axis. We could have just also said versus. But I mean, really what we're doing is we're counting growth, so I put the word grown in. If you said bacteria B versus days grown, something like that, that'd be fine. We're going to try to keep the title fairly simple. Then I need to go through and label my axes, right? So here's my x-axis, and like we said, it's going to be, I'm sorry, this is our x, right? Correct? This is going to be the number of days. Okay? And so what we're really doing is we're labeling it growth, and our units is days. Okay? So how many colonies, the number of colonies over a certain number of days. So we have labeled and we've put the units because the units are scale, the numbers that we're going to use down here, they count for the number of days. And then along the y-axis, it was what we recorded, and that was the number of bacteria. Oh, why did it get so dark? No, okay. All right, here we go. Okay, so over here, what really this stands for on the y-axis is bacteria B, and we're just using a whole number. Okay, so we could call it the number of colonies, but for this has got both the scale, or what we're going to use as the units. It's just the number. Over here, our units are days. So we will do some more practice of these so that it will make a little bit more sense as we go along. Then we have to go through and decide what our how we're going to do the counting. And the way you decide that is, it seems a little tricky, but it's really not. You have to find the range of each piece of data, or the range of the data, sorry, and then you're going to divide it by how many grid lines you have. And then we're going to just make the counting of that, we're going to count by an easy number. So for example, if you were going to count by 1.3, 0, 1.3, 2.6, 3.9, like I don't even want to go any higher because then I have to think. That's not really an easy number to count by. I can do it, but easier numbers would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Threes would work. I probably wouldn't really use 4. I would definitely use 5. And then from there, I might go 5, 10, 15, 20, like those counting numbers. I would use counting numbers that would be easier for people to do quickly. Bless you. So the next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to figure out what scale we're going to use. Okay, to do this, the first thing I would do is look at the data. Okay, so on here, I see that my number of days for my x-axis goes up to 16. Now, when I am figuring out my numbers, I need to make sure that my scale is consistent. In other words, each line here is consistent. I don't go, for example, let's start at 0. I don't go 0, 2, 4, 8, 22, right? I'm not counting consistently there. These gaps, or these what I call the grid lines, they need to be numbered consistently. So if I say 0, 1, then that means I just jumped by 1. That makes this 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, etc. Or if I said 0, 2, then that one's going to be 4, and that's going to be 6 and 8 and 10. These grid lines, your scale is what it's called, needs to be consistent. When I look at the data, the first thing I see is like, oh, this only goes up to 16. So if it's a small number like that, I just see if I have enough lines. There is, and I'm going to show you with it over here, a really formulaic way of doing it, and I'm going to teach you that. But sometimes I just look at the numbers and go, is it easy already? So I see that I go up to 16. If I look at these, luckily enough, these are 5, right? So 5, 10, 15, 20. Oh, I would have enough lines to count by ones. So I'm going to count the bottom here by ones. And just for that reason, I have enough grid lines to go over my highest number, which was 16. If you don't mind, I'm going to kind of like turn my paper, but I'm going to make it look like it's not turned to you. So that was really nice. That fit. Okay, now I need to look at my other number goes up to 60. What I need to do is I need to figure out the range of data, and I will be showing this to you more than once. But I find the range of data. And so to find the range of data, I'll be up soon. To find the range of data, you take your highest data point and you subtract your lowest data point. Okay, now this number is awfully close. Well, it's awfully close to 0, right? But anyway, ignore that. So I'm going to take 60 and I'm going to subtract 2 and I'm going to get 58, right? And then I look at how many lines I have. Well, we already know that this goes up by 5, so 5, 10, 15, 20. I have a total of 20 lines. So I'm going to take the 58 and I'm going to divide it by 20, and I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to go into my calculator, and I'm going to say 58 divided by 20, and that's going to equal 2.9. Okay? 2.9 is a pretty weird number to count by. Not only that, I need to be consistent. So here's that idea of I'm probably going to start at 0. There are times where you don't start at 0. This is so close to 0 that it really makes sense to start at 0. So instead of saying 60 minus 2, because sometimes you're not going to want to go back to 0, and again, we'll talk about that. But here we're going to say 60 minus 0 is 60. divide it by 20, and I'm going to get 3. Okay, so 3 is a fine number. 3, 6, 9, 12. You could also just count by 5s. 5 would work as well. One more time, the reason why I did this twice is because 2 was already so close to 0, and I know that I'm actually going to make this, where I start counting, I'm going to make that be 0, because 2 is close to 0. Now, if this data was a lot different, and let's say the data started at, I don't know, even 40. Okay, if this was 40 to 60, then I would not have gone and used 0, because that would have had a big spot on my graph where I had no information at all. Okay, again, we'll be using different examples, and I'll show you that at some later point. For now, this is the scale. So instead of starting with 3, instead of counting by 3, we can totally count by 3s. I'm going to say, you know what, 5 is a really easy counting number, and I'm going to go ahead and go up to 5. So I'm going to say 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65. So when you look at this, something that's really good about a graph is that your graph should take up like at least half of the graph. The reason why I say that is because you don't want all of your data all squished together. You want your graph to be really legible, and so you want to have that data spread out larger on the graph paper. That makes it easier to read. Okay. All right, now I'm just going to go through. We've done the title. We've labeled the axes, right? This was bacteria B. It's just whole numbers. It's kind of a weird way to say what the units are. We've said that this is the days of growth, right? So this is the number of days of growth. So really this is the unit right here. We've gone through and made our scale. On this one we just made it super simple because we had more lines than the highest number of 16. On the other one we went through and found the range. We said 60 minus 2, but 2 was so close to 0 we went ahead and said 60 minus 0. If you count by 3s, there's totally nothing wrong with that. This would have still been 0, and you would have ended up with 60 way up here. You would have been using the whole graph. Totally fine with that. If you would have counted by 20s though, like imagine you counted by 20s because you're like, oh, I know I can count by 20s, then we would have had 20, 40, 60, and all of our data would have been squished down here. Right? That's not half of your graph paper. That makes it much more difficult to read. Then I'm just going to go through and plot my data. We're almost done. Okay, so I have 2, 2. So at 2 days, so 2 days, we had 2 colonies. At 4 days, there were 8 colonies. That's going to be below the 10. At 8 days, there were 32 colonies. 8, there's 25, 30, 32. At 12 days, there were 56, 55, 56. And then at 16 days, there were 60. It's 55, 60. Okay, so in your graph, if you left it as a scatter plot, this is where you don't connect the dots, that would be fine. If you went through and connected the data points, that'd be fine as well. That part I'm not really worried about at this point. Okay, so anyway, that is how I would have done this graph. I'll do a couple more, but not right now.